Hey guys, welcome to today's video. If you guys read the title, you know where we're here. I want to talk about some blush formulas. It's one of my favorite things to talk about on my channel. I've got 30 different blush formulas. I would consider them all not viral formulas, formulas that a lot of people don't talk about, some that are older releases, but still stand the test of time in my collection. Some that are pretty unique formulas overall, and quite frankly, formulas that not enough people talk about. Some of these products I don't even talk about that much on my channel anymore. They've just gotten older. I haven't done like a blush ranking in a while, so there's a lot of new formulas that I have tried that not a lot of people seem to talk about. I'm going to be showing you guys cutaways of me applying everything. I have broken these up into categories. So the first category that I want to start out with is powder, and it's going to be of the sheen variety. Each one of these gives a little bit of sheen to the cheeks. Each one of them has like a little sparkle, maybe even like a little metallic reflection, if you will. So let's start off with like the powder sheen category. I want to start off with an older formulation. These were popular when I first started getting into makeup, which was like 2020, maybe 2019. I was hearing like a lot of people talk about these, but I do believe that they came out like prior to that. This is the Buxom Wanderlust Primer Infused Blush, this shade that I have, Dolly. I think this is a super underrated formula that's still super relevant. There are a lot of blushes that are coming out like very similar formulations to this. If you look at the new, say, Super Suede Radiant Blush, I think it's like a very similar vibe as this. Even the Kosas ones that released within the last 4 months are of a similar vibe to this. At the time when I started getting into makeup in 2020, not a lot of blush formulations had this kind of radiance and sheen to it. I think it's still a beautiful powder formula that blends seamlessly into the cheeks. I think it's a buildable formula. This one tends to be a little bit more on the pigmented side, but I think you can dial it back. Everybody loved the shade Dolly. It's this nice pinky mauve shade that I think suits very light to medium skin tones. It's a smooth formulation on the cheeks. It gives that pop radiance if that's something that you're into, which I happen to love a really radiant formula. So I don't have any powder matte formulas to talk about in today's video. Anyway, I just think that there's a lot of blush that have come out that are trying to do similar things, and I still think this is a wonderful formulation that is still on the market and still being made. So Buxom, I think, is a good way to kick it off with a very underrated formula that I still feel like makes me want to go crazy on my cheeks to give me that beautiful radiant finish. A very, very similar vibe and a very, very underrated formula, in my opinion, is the Laura Geller Baked Blushes. These are called Bake, Blush, and Brighten, and these are in the satin finish. She has a lot of different shades in this line, and now that they're in Ulta, they're probably a lot easier for most people to get, although I do believe that I got this on Amazon, so she does sell on Amazon. This one is in the shade Down to Earth. As far as a radiant finish goes that isn't like sparkly, this one is probably the most intense. This is again a very mauvey pink shade that I think is universally flattering for a lot of people. This one has more of like almost that like metallic layer on the top without it giving any kind of cast to the cheeks. It's again super smooth. It's a beautiful baked formula that just airbrushes the cheeks. You can build this up. You can start off lighter. It's a baked formula that's made in Italy. I have never found that enough people talk about the baked formulas from Laura Geller. Now the eyeshadows are great. They're not necessarily of my style, but I think that the blush formulation, very specifically in the satin finish, is quite an underrated formula. Again, now that these are at Ulta, they're so much easier for us to get. I love the Down to Earth shade, but she has so many. This formulation has like 39 different shades in the range. If you go to her website, there's like a lot. Now, some of them are different finishes. You have like matte finishes and then satin finishes, etc. So they're not all the satin finish, but still a ton of shades to choose from in the line. All right, another formulation that just got reformulated. This is the Lancome Blush Subtil. This one very specifically is in the shade 301, which is Blushing Tresor. Again, nobody talks about this particular formulation, especially as it pertains to a radiant formula. I think Lancome does a really good job with any kind of complexion or base products. They have recently come out with a shade extension in this line, but none of them appear to have the kind of sheen that this one does. This I find is a very unique shade in and of itself. It's like this hot pink with gold on top, which I absolutely love. but like as far as a luxury cheek product goes, not a lot of them have this kind of finish to them. This one is really smooth on the cheeks. It lasts a long time. It's foolproof. All of these radiant powder blush formulas that I'm talking about right now are absolutely foolproof. They're super easy to apply. They don't take any particular navigation of the formula to get on. This is a super underrated one. I'm not even interested in testing the new formulations because I looked at the shades and I don't think they're anything as unique as this one. And Lancome in these blush subtils does have a couple of pretty unique shades, a couple that are pretty nude, so you don't have to go for this particular finish. I do feel like the Blushing Tresor is just an extremely underrated formulation overall. I have purchased 2 of these, and a lot of these blush you guys are going to see I've got like multiple shades in the formula because I started out with one and I loved it so much I went back for more. I did the same thing with this. So this one is just a unique shade in and of itself. Speaking of a product that I bought more than one shade in, this one was talked about I think in like 21, maybe 22 quite a bit, but not a lot of people are talking about it now. It's the Heaven's Glow blush from M Cosmetics. I have 2 shades. Venetian Rose is the mauve shade, and then I have Faded Clementine, which is the orangey kind of tangerine shade. Again, at the time when these came out and I loved this formulation, not a ton of brands were doing that kind of radiant, metallic, sparkly looking without being sparkly formulation on the cheeks. This was just like one of those. I was like, wow, you can get that really nice radiant finish out of it for a formula that again is super easy to put on, and it had really good lasting power. I remember when I would start wearing these to work, people were asking me like, oh my gosh, what blush are you wearing? That usually doesn't happen. There's not usually like a ton of people out there like asking me what formulations I'm wearing on my cheeks, but every time I wore the M Cosmetics Heaven's Glow blush, I was getting a question. I don't use these enough. They're beautiful compacts. They're big and bulky, but like they're beautiful and hefty, and honestly I feel like there's just a ton of product here. These would last forever. Completely underrated formula. You guys are probably going to hear me say underrated 966 times, so stay tuned. All right, these next one, these are a newer release. They are the newest release of all these radiant blushes that I'm talking about right now, but I never heard as many people talk about them when they first launched and like liking the formulation as much as I did when they did. You'll see, these are the Kissed by the Sun multi-use cheek glow from Iconic London. I have not 1, not 2, but 3 different shades. I did start, in fact, with 1 shade, went back for a second and was like, let me see what other shades they have. Now, this is a limited formulation in terms of shade range. I want to say there is 4 shades total, and the only one that I'm missing is like a bronzier shade, which I think is meant to be kind of a shimmery bronzy formula. So I just skipped it because I like these as blush specifically. This has got to be the most radiant, the most like sparkly kind of metallic of these ones that I'm going to talk about. Now, this one in the orange one is in the shade Hot Stuff. The one I'm actually wearing on my cheeks right now is in Playtime, which I think is the most new shade I have, but I started with the shade, which is So Cheeky, which I think is a beautiful like warm nude on the cheeks. Now, these are really interesting formula. They're like putty, but they're powder. They're just smooth like silk, like water. They really go on very close to the skin. But with these, there's a ton of reflection. There's a lot of like what you may consider metallicness. But when a brand does the base of the color super well, in addition to giving you that really nice radiant kind of soft metallic finish, I think it's fabulous. So I thought that these were tremendous for what they were. It's a formulation that I just really enjoy, and not a lot of brands do this, like this smooth and this silky and this soft. And I mean, really, they sit immensely close to the cheek. They're basically like a highlighting blush, very smooth, baked kind of highlighter feel, like esque. I find that they don't emphasize texture. I find that they lock down really well into the cheeks. They just have this like stick-to-itiveness. They fade evenly and gracefully. Super underrated. Again, I wouldn't buy 3 shades if I didn't really love this formula. I personally love the way that this looks. I think it's smooth. I think it sits perfectly and evenly. I take a really, really fluffy brush and pounce that whole thing into the pan and then just bounce it onto my cheeks a couple times. I'm in love with this formulation, and I don't hear enough people talking about it. Let's move on to a brand new category. Let's talk about some cream and liquid formulations that are a soft matte finish. You guys will see that I really enjoy a lot of different formulations. Although there are a lot in here that I think are like juicy and kind of radiant and kind of metallic, if you will, I do enjoy a really soft matte formula. And I find that these again are formulations that are still on the market that kind of came and went. I have some Asian brands in here as well that I think do a really good job with a really airbrushed soft matte formula. So again, not talked about enough and may have had their time in and then didn't stay long, but I think that they're worth talking about. They're still some of my favorite in my collection. So let's start off with a stick formulation that gives a really nice, smooth, soft matte finish. It's from Iconic London. This is called their Blurring Blush Stick, and this one is in the shade Daiquiri. Now these blush sticks, when they're in this soft matte finish, they can tend to feel a little silicone-y. Some of them can feel a little bit more thick. I find that this particular formula, when it came out, no one was talking about it and no one was liking it the way that I was liking it. I think it's just a thinner stick formula as far as like a soft matte finish goes, and it doesn't look thick and heavy on the cheeks. Sometimes when it's like this thick whipped texture, you can see the separation between the foundation and the actual product itself. This one just buffs in kind of like it's an extra powdery formula. It's kind of on the drier side. It's not thick, it's very thin. Buffs in really well. It's a really easy formula to use. I don't feel like you can go in way too heavy with this. A powder formula in a stick, that's just what this feels like. So it looks very blurring, but it doesn't really have that silicone feel. It's not slippy at all. Like if I apply this right, it can look almost airbrushed on the cheeks. Beautiful formula. They're still making this. I even want to say this might be on sale right now. I hope they don't discontinue it. And when it came out, I don't feel like anyone was talking about it. The next two that I want to talk about are K-beauty brands, and I don't hear really anybody talking about either of these. I know I'm just going to keep saying that, but this one here is from Holika Holika, and it's the Jelly Dough blusher. This one is in the shade Grapefruit Jelly, which is number 2. I did pick this up on YesStyle, but a lot of these are available on Amazon. This is a really interesting formula. A lot of like Asian brands have done this kind of like putty formulation. Again, it's like on the drier side, so you're not picking up like a layer of emollients. You're picking up something that's kind of like moldable. It's almost like clay-like. Again, kind of on the drier side. This one I've like kind of hit pan on, and it's easy to do because it's, again, it's like it's pliable, but it's not wet. It's one of the better airbrushed looking ones on the cheek. It just kind of dries down to that powder finish. Again, foolproof. Like there's nothing that I feel like you could do with this product to make it look bad on the cheeks. You could go in super duper heavy. You could go in with a super light hand. Either way, this is going to come out looking really nice on the cheeks. This has really good lasting power because it's that drier formula and it really locks down. I don't hear a ton of people talking about like older released K-beauty products as far as like blush goes, even when I see videos come out that talk about K-beauty. So this one is absolutely fabulous, and it's not very expensive either. The next one is from Kaja. This is one of their Mochi Pops. Now, I think Kaja does a really good job with a lot of very unique formulations that keep it in front of us. Like a lot of us don't talk about a ton of K-beauty brands. The Kaja is so much more mainstream that products like this, I think a lot of K-beauty brands are making, but Kaja's just out here making it super cute. Again, this is kind of one of those like harder, almost putty formulations, but it's drier, so you can kind of like move it around. Again, it's not super emollient, but like immediately looks like a powder formula and airbrushed and smooth on the skin. When they're like this, they just don't add any texture to the cheeks. They look really one with the skin and they lock down, they last all day. They're not terribly dissimilar. I would say that the Kaja is just a little bit drier of a formula than the one from Holika Holika, but these are both relatively similar formulations and they're both fabulous. All right, the next one is a liquid formulation. This is from Flower Beauty. This is the Ultralight Liquid Blush. I didn't love the highlighters and I didn't necessarily love the bronzers slash contours that Flower Beauty came out with, but the blushes on the other hand, I did really enjoy. I thought that these were just as good as the Charlotte, maybe even better. I really enjoyed the formulation in these matte blush wands. These are pretty pigmented, but the blush one, for example, as opposed to the highlighter and contour that Flower Beauty came out with, I feel like they take longer to dry down, so they're easier to blend in. Again, pretty intense, but they are lasting all freaking day. These are not going anywhere. I think you have to be careful though with this formulation not to go in too heavy, so it's not like a foolproof formula. But I think that it blends in beautifully. I like the effect that this gives. I don't mind these little puffy applicators. They don't bother me one freaking bit. I don't think that they make the product last quite as long as like, you know, something that's coming in a pot, you know, that you can kind of put the cover back on. But when they're new, I think they're just fine. I don't mind them whatsoever. Really good formula if you like something that's a little bit more matte or soft matte on the cheeks. Now, speaking of completely underrated when it launched, but a newer launch, the next one is the KVD Good Apple Blush Balm Duo. This one is in the color story Secret Thicket, so you have actually 2 different shades in these. When these came out, I didn't see like one person testing these, and I've only seen one other person say that these are a super underrated formula. That's pretty much it. Not that I watch a ton of content creators, but like even the ones that I do, they just don't talk about this formulation enough. It's a really opaque, very intensely pigmented looking product, and it's a lot more emollient and movable than a lot of these other blushes, but it is quite truly a super soft matte finish. If you go in with a light hand with these, they are way prettier than you might imagine they look on the cheek. And honestly, even though they look super intense, the way that they buff out, if you guys are looking at the cutaway at the current moment, you can see that the color isn't as intense as they look in the pan. So you know this is more of a like silica based formulation that gets a lot thinner as you begin to pounce it into the cheeks or even do a swatch and rub it into your hand. It sits really closely to the skin. It doesn't emphasize texture. It does not look flat at all. It kind of almost has like this very, very slight like glossy kind of finish to it. It lasts all freaking day. I loved this product so much. When I was in TJ Maxx the other day, they had a couple of these and they were all in this color story here, which is Nymph's Grove, and it looks like it's going to be for a deeper skin tone. But I was like, you know what? The other one did too. I'm going to take a chance with this because this purple looks absolutely fabulous. If it's cool toned and it's not too deep, not too pigmented, then it will look really nice. Anyway, it was on sale for $8 at TJ Maxx the other day and I was like, oh, I'm getting it. So if these are like going on sale or something like that, I'd say like if you were interested in checking them out, now's a good time. All right, this one I have heard quite a few people talking about, but not really anymore. I think it like had its minute and then it kind of faded. This is the Cheek and Lip Stick from REM Beauty. This one is in the shade Audition. This is fabulous. This is like, you could give this blush to literally anyone starting blush out and they could make this look good. Again, very foolproof. It's got a thicker feel to it and it almost has that kind of glossy finish. But again, the way that it buffs out is like, it blurs the edges. It doesn't add texture. It's a really, really thin formula, even though it's super opaque, but it has that dry down. It really does have that very powdery finish. So that blush is staying all day. It does not move. I would like to get more shades in that, but I absolutely do not need more blush. And only those that I get immensely obsessed with do I go back for shade 2, 3, 4, and 5. But any one of these blush, I would go back for an additional shade and potentially have thought about it at least once. All right, this next one had its moment as well. This is from M Cosmetics. It's the So Soft blush stick, and this one is in Venetian Rose. When people were talking about it, and nothing has changed, is that it is a really pigmented formula, but very creamy. Also has that very soft matte finish, but almost a glossy glow on the top, and locks down on your cheeks and lasts all freaking day. This one of all of these ones that I was talking about, aside from the KVD, maybe has like the most glossy layer at the top of it, so it doesn't look flat on the cheek. I would say that there's an element of that in each of these, and one of my criticisms is when you have like a soft matte finish, that sometimes it can look like stark and flat, and then the edges look rough and they don't look like you did a good job blending, and they look like an obvious contrast where you just slapped a layer on top. All of these have the ability to blend and mesh with your skin, and they look more flattering as your skin warms up. There's a lot of really redeeming things that you don't realize went into the formulation that make these just, I think, personally more exceptional than like other formulations I find on the market. But this is a video about underrated blush, so it's the underdog's time to shine. All right, this one, no one talked about the way that I liked it when it came out, and everyone was talking about one that came out like after it. This is the Cheek Clapper 3D Blush Trio from One Size. This one is in the shade Very That. I saved this one for last in the soft matte category because it is a trio. You have a soft matte cream, you have a powder matte blush, and then you have like a more metallic shimmery topper over here, which you could use for a highlighter depending upon your skin tone and how these work for you. I like all three of these. I think it has always been like a really underrated formulation. When it launched, not a lot of people were talking about it, and I've said many times that I love this formulation. And I don't reach for it enough. Still, I've said that for a long time. Each one of these does something unique but exceptionally well. The cream matte one is a little bit thicker and a little bit more moussey, so you do not need a lot of product to go into the cheeks to make it look soft and airbrushed. The powder formulation is fabulous, and then the shimmer formulation is also fabulous. Now the shimmer one is a little bit thicker in texture, but I don't think it emphasizes texture. I can wear this as a highlighter, but I do wear it as a blush topper. I have gone in with each one of them individually, and then I've layered all three of them on top of each other. Gone in with the cream, set with the powder, and layered the shimmery one on the top, and it looks fabulous. Each one of these has really good lasting power, but again, it's really just about like how smooth each one of these looks on the cheeks and how well it takes to the warmth of your skin. So super underrated. And the one that I was talking about that gets a crap ton of hype is the Patrick Ta duos, which I think are great. But if you like a soft matte finish, that's where you're gonna wanna go for the one size. That's personally the difference that I find between these two, because the Patrick Ta duos, they have radiance to them in the cream formulation. All right, we are moving on to a different category, you guys. We are gonna move on to the cream and liquids that have a metallic finish. All right, if I've said it once, I've said it again. The Say blushes are super underrated. These are called the Glow Sculpt cream blushes. I have Mauve Glow and I have Peach Glow. I think these are really the only two that I think that I really love as far as like the shades go. I don't think this is like a super extensive shade range. These do remove, so you can purchase like the compacts individually without having to buy the case again. I did mention that there's a lot of extra space in here, but that's fine. You know, packaging is packaging, especially when it's a reusable or refillable. These are just different. Now these are really metallic formulations, the next ones, but most especially this one. So if it's not something that you're interested in, I could see why this didn't get a ton of hype, but I personally like it. I think when you make something metallic, you're a standout product if you don't add too much texture to the cheeks, especially being like a thicker cream formulation. And I think that that's what these are from Say. I think they have a little bit more stickiness than maybe like a soft matte finish. But again, I still feel like they sit closely enough to the skin that they don't give you that added texture. These are good again because they give that radiant metallic finish, but still bring in that base pigment. So you're not getting that like weird dark cast or gray cast that some metallic formulas can give, especially if they don't have as much base. I think that these bring that, maybe not in every shade, but in the two shades that I have. I like this compact. I like the big mirror. The new Say blushes that just came out, the radiant ones, the super suede ones, like everyone was like, it's cheap packaging. So did I. But here's where it isn't. Like this is a formulation where this packaging is legit and really pretty and sleek and nice to have in the collection, even though that's not what this is about. But it's just a different formulation overall. I think for like being metallic, you know, it's kind of interesting that they're thicker, but they're still quite emollient. Again, these lock down, but it's a metallic formulation thing. You know, I think it kind of comes down to that they added enough base pigment in here to not give you that cast and then still look really even and untextured on the cheeks. All right, these are the only of their kind in today's video. These are from Juvia's Place, another metallic formula, but it's liquid. These are called, I think they're called the Blushed Liquid Blush. If the naming convention follows from all the other stuff that they've been doing, I will say I have two shades that are pretty similar, but one was intended to be more like Goldie Peach and the other one was more like Goldie Pink. These are meant to be metallic. They are the counterparts to like the ones that are completely solid color. So I do have in what I would consider the more peachy shade, Soft Tulip Glow, and then Rosy Posy Glow. Again, just like their counterparts, these can be super intensely pigmented. So I put these on the back of my hand and then I pick them up with a sponge 100% of the time. It was recommended to me to use a damp sponge when I was first trying these. I don't feel like the sponge has to be like that. If you tap off the sponge onto the back of your hand, these are seamless, perfect. This is my favorite kind of like liquid formulation where the emollients but the dry down is like perfectly balanced. There are other formulations that I have that are similar to this in my collection, but I just feel like Juvia's Place did it the best and I really don't hear anyone talking about specifically this metallic formula. This again sits really close to the skin. It has really good base pigment. It does have that very obvious metallic finish without giving you a cast, without making your cheeks look overly textured. The lasting power is insane. If you wanted crazy pigment, you could, meaning that a lot of these shades could really work on a number of different skin tones. The shade range is pretty good in these. They're pretty affordable. I always like the way my cheeks look when I wear these, and I always find that even though I might be intimidated of the applicator or just how pigmented they're going to be, that I can get a really good, beautiful blend, something that's not too intensely pigmented application on my cheeks. So again, I think Moira does ones like these. I feel like Juvia's Place did it better when it comes to like the metallic finish. All right, these are a stick formulation, and not one person have I seen on YouTube talk about these, and I believe they're still being made. These are from the more affordable line of About Face. These are AF94 Play Date Multi-Use Cheek and Lip Colors. The two shades that I have are like a purple shade, that's If You Dare, and then First Date, which is a nice peachy shade. These have that like wrapped in kind of sparkle to them, so each of them have like kind of a gold sparkle, gold sheen, gold metallic finish to them. They're a drier formulation for a stick, so they're like silica based, but they're much more sheer. So it takes a lot to really build these up, so you again can't go too crazy with them even if you really tried hard. But they're not flat, they are metallic, but they're a little bit, again, glossy. The products from About Face and AF94 are so underrated when it comes to the cheek formulations. I have another one in here that I honestly cannot figure out how she did the formulation. Kind of with these, like how are they so dry and so sheer, but when you put them on they have like a nice glossy finish? Is there some ingredient that does that? That it's like, it makes it look glossy, but it's completely dry. It's like a glossy lip stain, you know, something like that. There's like glycerin. I don't know what the ingredient would be, but these are fabulous if you like something a little bit shimmery, a little bit metallic. Even if you like something a little bit more sheer, these are probably pretty good for you. Again, they look airbrushed, they last, but they don't look flat. They have like a little bit of gloss to them. They're quite special, pretty affordable, sold at Walmart. We are moving on to another category. We're going to be talking about all of the juicy, radiant cream blush formulations that I have that I think are very underrated. Another product where I have two shades. I actually started out with two shades in this because Moira Beauty is very affordable. These were like $8.50 a piece. So usually when a Moira product launches, I will get multiple shades when they first launch to test them out. They're called the Soft Blush Balms, and I have the orangey shade in Dreamer. The more mauvey shade is in Talk to Me. These are obviously a dupe to the Merit Blush Balms, but I think these are better. They give that glossy finish, but they're more pigmented than the Merit, which was something I said as a complaint to the Merit Blush Balms, which was they fade off too fast and they're way too sheer and not pigmented enough. These, I think, came in and said, okay, we'll give you a little bit more pigment, but we'll also still keep your cheeks juicy, and we'll make the formula more long lasting. You can draw these straight onto the cheeks. I usually take most of these stick products and I pick them up with a brush. These are emollient, you guys, because they give that radiant finish, but they're not too emollient. These are perfectly balanced, and if I'm being honest, the Merit I thought got way too much hype for a formula that I found faded so freaking quickly. If I were to call Merit and I'd be like, hey Merit, this is one of their brushes actually, and I freaking love their brushes, but hey Merit, that formulation is fabulous, but it lasts like 2 hours on me. Think we could amp it up a little bit? Then these would have been their babies. That's all I gotta say. These are fabulous, easy to use, glossy finish, longer lasting power. Now they're not a soft matte, I'm gonna lock down all day, wear these to an event kind of formulation, but they do last a decent amount of time. All right, totally underrated formulation. I hear like one other person talking about these, and I can see why I think a lot of people might not like them. It's the Convertible Color from Stila. This one is in the shade Gerbera. Okay, they don't make this particular shade anymore, but they do have one that's like fairly similar that's still sold at Ulta. This has a very limited shade range. Also not the best in terms of like selling point for shade range, but I think they have like 4 that'll work for different skin tones, so kind of cross the range of skin tones. This one is very different and very thick and very juicy, but still so good, you guys. This one has a little bit more of a tacky finish, and it's one of the most juicy formulations that I have in my collection, but it applies so freaking evenly. I can take this with a sponge and just dab it onto the cheeks, and boy, there's just something super easy about this. And even though, again, it's a little bit more thick and it has a little bit of like a sticky finish to it, the juiciness on the cheeks, to me personally, I love it. I love it as long as it doesn't look too thick when I lay it down. I just want it to be like smooth, and so like that radiance doesn't look like heavy or forced, that it just looks more natural on the cheek. That's what I like, and I think that's what this one does really well. All right, here's another one I have multiple shades in. One is an older product and one is a newer one, so they just might have like changed the way the packaging looks. Why do not enough people talk about these? I don't even see these in people's collections when there's like declutters happening, or like people talking about their favorite products or going back to their holy grails or whatever. These are the Pot Rouge for lips and cheeks from Bobbi Brown. The Calypso Coral shade is the one that I started with, and then I went back because I really did like the formulation a lot in Powder Pink, which is actually like a warmer pink shade. This is one of the uniquer formulas in today's video. This one is a lot stiffer, so it has like a very, very glossy, kind of like sticky layer. The pigment isn't coming at you from this whipped texture. This is really just like a top layer of pigment. It's a very, very almost waxy texture. So it is juicified on the cheeks. If you like juicified, that's what you're gonna get with these, but they do not remain sticky. Honestly, I do not know how brands do it, how they can make the formulation radiant and very shiny on the cheeks, but not sticky. Like, how does that happen? What is in it? I need to know. I must do some research after this. I think these are very cool and unique because they're a really stiff formulation. They're almost like a lip balm. I mean, these are made for like lips and cheeks, so there you go. It has to be formulated well enough for that. I don't use products for my cheeks on my lips. I just don't do it. But yeah, that's what they feel like. They feel like a balm, but they're so smooth. They're just not intense. It's like a really dialed down saturation that really just gives them that even edge that sits very closely to the skin. These are really, really good if you like something radiant. This one is a newer product, and I saw some people talking about it, but again, we're gonna give it to Kaja. I'm telling you guys, they just make things look cute and it puts it in the forefront, and they're also sold in Sephora, so there you go. These are called their Dewy bars, and this one is in the shade Fig Smoothie. This is another immensely juicy texture. Now this one is a little bit of a more pigmented formulation than the rest of these, so you can sheer those out like a lot better than you can sheer this one, but this is of the juiciest of them all. They call it Dewy bar. It is dewy. This like reminds me of like how juicy a popsicle would be, okay? If you were to put a popsicle on your cheeks. This one does have like a slight stickiness to it, more so than the Bobbi Brown one, more so than like the Moira as far as radiant dewy blushes go. But I love the pigmentation. I love the juiciness in this. If you want a very, very dewy cheek, this Dewy bar from Kaja is amazing. I fell in love with it the minute that I started using it. It was one of the more dewy, more unique, very beautiful looking sticks on the cheek. Again, the most dewy. Your cheeks just genuinely will look wet, like you're like sweating. I love it, okay? All right, let's get into another formulation. I think they might be discontinuing and I'm super duper sad, but I also saw them discounted at TJ Maxx. I'll talk about these. I actually have two shades of this. This is the Melt Cream Blush Light. I have Pink Sand that is more of a, I wanna say like a warmer pink shade, and then Honey Thief, which is more of like your peachy shade here. These are fabulous, and I've seen so many people declutter these. They're so easy to apply. They're such a hybrid formulation. These aren't necessarily the most dewy, but they have this like super glossy top coat on them, but they're more thin than you might think, like looking in the pan. Again, they have like a real airbrushed quality about them. They're like perfectly balanced. So how come literally no one talks about them? They just have like a slight bit of glossy finish on the top. Otherwise, they're almost like a soft matte finish, like overall. So this was kind of a tough one to put them in this category because they're not matte, but they're not overly radiant. You know, they're not the Kaja Dewy bar. They're kind of like perfectly in the middle, maybe almost even like the AF94s, that they just have that like very, very light glossy finish on top. But these last all day. These are so good. They're discounted currently on the Melt Cosmetics website, so I do think that they're phasing them out. They had a bunch of different shades in TJ Maxx, oh my gosh, for $8, and I think they're like half off on the Melt Cosmetics website, and there's only like a couple left. So I do believe that they're discontinuing these. I have Polished here, which definitely looks like a very warm orange shade, and then this one looks like a very nude shade in Lynx. I'm very excited that I got my hands on these because these ones here I've actually had for several years. They're still good, they still smell good, they still perform really well, they're beautiful, and I think that these ones from TJ Maxx will last me a good amount of time. So yeah, super duper duper underrated formula. I've been calling these an underrated formula for a very long time. Okay, a much newer release, and I went back for a second shade in this, but I'll talk about that in a second. This is the IT Cosmetics Glow with Confidence Sun Blush. This is supposed to be like a bronzer slash blush hybrid. This is so unique. It's a potted formulation that's like super pigmented, but it has like a waxy top layer, and then the top layer is super shiny, but also it's so emollient that it buffs itself into the skin. You can kind of go in heavy with this product because it is ultra pigmented, but you can sheer it out too. It's that really thin formulation that you can make just a little bit go a really long way, but so super duper glossy. Now these were made to kind of be an all-in-one cheek product, so you could use this like a blush and a bronzer. They even call itself blush plus bronzer in 95% solid serum. This one is in the shade Sunlit 10. There was one other shade that I wanted to get. So what I was going to say to you guys earlier was, because they're a blush slash bronzer hybrid, they're, I think, kind of similar looking in terms of the shades. So it's a little bit of a limited shade range in this particular formulation, but I freaking love these. I think these came out last year and one of my favorite releases of the entire year. So good, and I don't have anything else in my collection that performs like that. Let's talk about 2-stick formulations. This one's also a newer release, the Nude Sticks. This is with the Glow Core, and this is in Rose Glow. I also saw these discounted at TJ Maxx. So this is what I'm saying. Like, if I find it at TJ Maxx, I feel like it's super underrated, okay? Because why? Why the hell is it there? Why is it struggling so much in stores that they're getting rid of their stock? Not that popular products can't wind up there, but these are so fabulous. These again launched last year, and I was saying that these were so freaking good and so much better than their soft matte formulation in my personal opinion. They say they have a glow core, but the whole formulation is glossy. These are ultra pigmented but super juicy. Very easy to blend out, but they are extra pigmented, so less is more with these. But they're a thicker texture and they stick to the skin really well. Part of why they're so pigmented, so they lock down. They have really good lasting power. So you kind of do have to go in with like a light hand with this if you want this product to move around, because it's a little bit tackier, and so it's going to kind of stick where you put it. That's what it really does, like lock down onto the cheeks. But it's so freaking juicy. I love it. I love the pigmentation, and I picked up a second shade at TJ Maxx. Okay. All right. Another fabulous formulation. This is in a shade extension, and again, like a totally underrated brand. I think I see Khaki Reviews Beauty talking about these. This is from Make Beauty. This is one of their heat stroke blushes, and this one's in the shade Bask. Such a more neutral, wearable shade. The first launch of these were super vibrant shades. This at the time was my juiciest stick formulation in a cream blush that I had. Like, now there's so many more that came out, but Make was like one of the first ones, and I was like, holy shit, my cheek is super shiny. This is a more sheer formulation, thinner, way more emollient than the Glow Core, which is still juicy, but not as much as this one. So I love that this one is just like a little bit more sheer, and if you're looking for like a sheer, juicy ass cheek, that you can get that with this. I decluttered my super vibrant red shade that I had because it was just too intense for my skin tone, but this one in Bask is a beautiful, like neutrally peachy shade. The shade extensions were, I think, needed for lighter skin tones and very much appreciated. We are on into our final category, you guys. These are all of the super radiant slash juicy liquid formula blush that I have that I don't hear enough people talking about. The first one up actually might be a cream formulation that's in like a doe foot style, so let's talk about that one first because I can't remember what the formulation is. This is the About Face Cheek Blush Rush Pigmented Fluid Blush, so maybe it is a liquid blush. This one is in the shade Starting Line. Everyone is talking about the Huda Beauty blushes that come in very similar packaging to this, but I find that those are a lot drier of a formula. They were harder to move around, and nearly no product picked up on the doe foot. Whereas this one I find picks up more product. This is a different formulation than I think the Huda is, which I feel is a much drier consistency. This one is what I was telling you guys earlier, which is like, it's drier, but then has that glossy top layer. You guys tell me what the heck that is. What makes it like that? I think that this is a pigmented formula, but it's super even. It's so even. You're not gonna get like a splotchy mess out of this. It's almost like what I would feel like a gel formulation might perform like. It just blends very evenly. It likes to stick to itself, so you can get a really solid fluid application on the cheeks. But because this one has that dry down with that glossy finish, this locks onto the cheeks and doesn't go anywhere. So very underrated, especially because when I compare it against the Huda Beauty ones that are getting a lot of hype, I think that this formulation in very, very similar packaging is better. All right, I've only ever seen one person talk about this, but if you want a dewy liquid formula, the Urban Decay Hydramaniac Blush Glow Hydrator is such a good option. This one is in the shade Wrecked. I believe that these are still made, and I don't know the shade range in these. This one is just a very thin, like gel-like formula that is more sheer. I think you can get good pigment out of it because it is kind of opaque. Like the color is very even, and again, the formulation, like it likes to stay together, so it's not gonna come out looking patchy, but it is just that more sheer, very emollient, slightly like gel serum-like texture that just is immensely juicy on the cheeks. Not the longest lasting, but like immensely juicy. So I really enjoy this. You know, this is a really good blush to just pop on during the summertime. And again, I've heard one other person talk about it. All right, let's go to the drugstore. We're gonna talk about the Flower Beauty blush balms. I have two shades again. This one over here that's a little bit more nude. It's kind of a warm nude in Spiced, and then this tangerine shade in Melon. Again, such a good formulation. And I love the component on these. They're just really easy to control. Your product doesn't like dry out. You don't get like a weird, you know, sticky puff applicator. These are juicy, but these again are opaque. You get a really even application with these. They remind me of like a more pigmented version of the Hydramaniac, and maybe like not as glossy, but just as thin. I like how thin these are without disturbing the foundation underneath, because again, the formula really likes to stick together. So it applies evenly without lifting the freaking foundation, and it doesn't have to look very thick. It can be very thin without disturbing anything. I think that's hard to do because there's a lot of cream formulations that I have, liquid formulations in my collection. The overall finish looks good, but if you get up super close, you can see there's a little bit of separation because the formula is just a little bit more thick. Sticks, liquids, I have a lot that do that. These just don't do that. They're special and drugstore, and not as many people talk about them maybe as they once did, but like I don't hear anyone talking about them anymore, and they're not a formulation I would want to declutter. Okay, I heard a lot of people not like this when it came out, and this one maybe had a little bit more viralness than a lot of these other ones. That's not a word, is it? This is the Afterglow Liquid Blush in the shade Orgasm from NARS. I immediately fell in love with this product. It's thin, but it's buildable. It's buildable, you guys, and it's that really nice flush of color. And Orgasm is a beautiful shade because it's like that golden peach, which I love. This one almost gives like a metallic finish to the cheeks, and you know what it reminds me a lot of? The one from About Face that I just talked about, which is it's very thin and it looks like it was like made for your cheeks, and it locks down, dries down, but still has that really glossy finish. This one maybe is a little bit more sticky than the one from About Face. It's just a thinner kind of like texture overall, even though they are kind of a similar finish. The texture is maybe a little bit different, so it's still just juicy and gorgeous, and I don't find that it's finicky at all or too sheer. And I honestly do not find that this disturbs any product underneath ever. Not powder, not just straight foundation. Oh, I love this. I would get more shades in this. And I will say this, like, I'll be fair to say that there are some NARS formulations, like the multi-stick or whatever the heck that is called, the multiple. I hated that. I actually thought that was a pretty popular product, and I thought it did not perform well. So I'm not like partial to every formulation they have out. I think this one is just exceptional. All right, this one, I have to like give it to them because I don't like a lot of their newer releases, especially in the cheek category. But this one is from ColourPop. This is called the Weightless Liquid Blush. This one is so different than all the ones that were coming out that were like in this same style doe foot applicator packaging, which is, this one is sheer. Like you'd think it wouldn't be, but it is a really sheer formulation. Really emollient. I mean, it is a liquid, but it's a lot slippier than that. And it's a really sheer formula without looking patchy. it's just juicy and it's not at all what I expected it to be. I think when I got it, I was like, okay, this is gonna be one of those pigmented, drier matte Moira formulas or the Juvia's Place formulas in the matte formulation liquid blush, but it's not. It's very thin, it's very sheer, but not sticky, but very, very radiant. So ColourPop did a really good job with this. I highly enjoyed this when this launched last year and didn't hear anyone talk about it. Maybe there were people and I just didn't watch enough YouTube. Totally could be true, but really, really good launch from ColourPop. Whoa, ColourPop. All right, the final number 30, underrated blush formulation, but I will say it might be more popular than a lot of these other ones. This one is from CL. It's the Blush and Protect SPF 50 Mineral SPF. This one is in the shade January. This one was actually a shade extension. They came out with January and June. This one I find is like super similar to the ColourPop one, which is like, it's more sheer and it's like thin, but it's not identical. This one has way more texture to it than the one from ColourPop, which is like almost a watery finish. Anyway, it's just immensely juicy. That's all it is. It's juicy, it's thin, it likes to lock onto the skin, it likes to adhere with the warmth of your skin. You can shear this out, you can build this up. There's so many things like you can do with it, and it doesn't matter where you take it, it's gonna look really good. And again, very juicy. This one doesn't have the most lasting power of all of them, but it's longer than you'd think for something so glossy. Great, great summer product. I love that this has SPF in it, and I would get more shades in this formulation. There goes my daughter. It is Saturday. It's already wild in my house. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. I will be linking all of the products in the description box, including the shades that I either like put on or I did talk about today, just in case you guys were wondering. If you guys are not currently subscribed, you guys, I would love to see you subscribe. I'm out of here, and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Bye guys.